So we don't have any. Uh, Usually every week I get a question before we, at least from somebody, but we don't have any questions this week. Maybe this will be a short one. Um, so if you guys don't have a question just yet, I will just blab off for a while. Anyway, I was just playing right now. Um, let's see if you can hear the changes. So I'm in my technique rotation. I just started this in, I think it's May. Um, Started practicing my technique stuff a bit differently from what I used to do. And what I just did, is giant steps, basically a whole step up from where it's normally played, from the original key. A whole step up from the original key. And the reason I'm playing it slow is because I've only been working on that for about 4 days, 5 days. So that's what I'm doing right now. I have one more tune to do in this rotation, and I get to go to a new key. Ha! Right? And that's basically what it is I've been in the same key since, it's been months and months in the same key. It's sort of like the same concept as my uh, tonalization studies, but on a much larger scale. So that, in fact, what I started doing recently is, I'm always working on a tune. And no, that's not part of the giant steps thing. I'm doing the giant steps thing for technique. I'm not learning. So when I say I'm working on a tune, I'm talking about diving deep into the tune so that I learn every nook and cranny of what happens in that tune. Um, and that's not what I'm using giant steps for in this key. I'm doing giant steps in this key to get the fingering stuff going. So there are patterns in giant steps besides just using it for what we call the Coltrane substitutions. There's patterns in giant steps that pop up in some of the tunes, and if you've mastered giant steps, then those progressions end up being a lot easier. And I'm not talking about the circle of thirds. There's people talk about the circle of major thirds, um, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those progression, and one of them that comes to mind actually is a Coltrane tune, um, but it's not a Coltrane tune that has those progressions. Does that make? I guess it doesn't make sense. I'm just blabbing right now. Um, so yeah, and so what I've decided to do is, since I'm doing all this other stuff in one key, why not whatever tune that I'm working on, learn a tune that's in that same key that I'm working on. And yeah, I've been doing. So I'm in the key of E flat right now. I'm almost done. I think I have about a week left. And since I only had this idea to do the new tune uh, with the key that I'm doing, I only got that idea like a month ago, 2 months ago. No, actually, it's been 2 months ago now. Um, so that's not finished yet. I'm not done with that tune. So I think what I'm going to do is when I'm done with the technique stuff, use all my technique time to finish working on this tune. Once again, not Giant Steps, it's another tune. And then when I'm done with that, I'll go hit a couple jam sessions. That's what I'm telling myself, right? You know, the jam sessions are so important. And I actually feel like I need to start a jam session. So I used to be a host of a jam session at a bar. And here's the thing, is I just spent some time online looking for jam sessions because, like I said, I want to go to a jam session when this is over. Not because I want to go jam and not because I want to uh, use what I learned or anything like that. That's not it. I just feel like if you're not doing jam sessions, what are you doing? I mean, you're not really a jazz player if you're not doing at least like one a year, at least, you know? I mean, even if you have, the biggest excuse people have for not doing the jam sessions is that they have gigs. But you're only thinking about yourself when you say that, right? We don't go to the gig, to the jam session just so that we can have time playing jazz. It's part of, I've been talking about all this time. I've been talking about the human connection. The jam session is the central hub of what goes on in the jazz community. Where else are you going to get more than one trumpet player on the same gig? I mean, that's just one reason to look at it, and I think the jam sessions are extremely important in that regard to make that kind of human connection, not just with the other players. That's part of it. A human connection with the other players, a human connection to the audience, a human connect. It just helps you stay relevant. I remember when I was younger, and we used to practice a lot. I mean, me and my buddies, we used to practice a lot, working on our jazz, even back in high school. And but if you only just play at home, or if you only just play like at school or something, um, there's something missing in your playing. I mean, there's something truly. There's something missing in your jazz playing if you're not going to the jam sessions. And that something that's missing is the human component. That's what's missing. And I actually see this. I actually see the benefit, the results of this, right? I actually see people going and playing in public, and you might as well be playing with tracks. You might as well be playing with tracks. Hello, Kwaku. Nice to see you again. If you're going to, if you're not going to learn how to be part of a living, so I see a jazz group, as a living organism, right? Okay, so I'll finish up real quick. We can get to your question right away. I see jazz as a living organism. Living in a sense, when I say that, what made me start saying that is I went to, long time ago, decades ago, I went to the Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. And they were talking about the stalagmite and the stalagmite, right? And they said that the reason why we don't touch those things is because they're alive. And if you touch them, the oils from your fingers will change the way that the sediment comes down, and it will no longer be alive anymore. So it's not alive in a living organism sense. It's alive in a sense that the system that's set up is I don't know how to say it, but that's to me when I'm saying that jazz it has that kind of life. I'm talking about, you know, the kind of life that not necessarily a organic kind of. Well, then we are organic, right? So in that sense, it is organic, but that's not what I mean. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, we can go on to your question. What is your? Oh, I have a question about Chops Express. Yes. What is your question about Chops Express? Just for you that don't know about this, Chops Express is the book that I wrote for my students. That's shorter, and we recommend the Chops Express for students that practice up to an hour. If you're going to practice more than an hour, then you might want to have the other books, but up to an hour, you want to be that. Started daily routine exercise on Chops Express. Started on Pioneer level. How many reps should I do on each exercise? No repetition. Just get through it, okay? No repetition. In fact, even where there are repeats. So let me get my copy of the. Oh, I have it right here. No, I don't. Oh, here we go. Even on the ones that have repeats, those repeats are not there to repeat. I know that's kind of confusing. So like on these, that repeat is not there for you to play it twice. That repeat is there to get you back where you start, because we want to do this in a multiple of keys. So like, for example, if we do the key of F, we're going to start on the one that the bottom one is on F. So we play from there to here. We skip those notes because those are only for the sharp keys. Then when we get to this, we go back to here and we end where we started. That's why we have the repeats. It is not, and almost everybody makes that mistake, right? Almost everybody plays those exercises twice. And the problem is there's an appendix at the end. On page appendix 3, how to practice the tonalization studies. Okay, so that's at the end of the book. So yeah, we don't want to repeat any of them. Now, here's the thing. That changes everything, doesn't it? Okay, that changes everything. So we don't repeat anything. We want to move on, even if there's mistakes. We don't want to repeat anything. And what that does is kind of puts a little pressure on you, right? You kind of know, because it's never okay to make mistakes. So moving on is not saying, hey, it's okay. He said it's okay if I made mistakes. I'm just moving on. No, that's not what I said. It's not okay to make mistakes. We just don't want to stop to fix them. Next time, do better. All right? Just do better next time. And that kind of puts the pressure on, because you're not getting a second chance. You're not, and what that kind of forces you to do. Hello, Anthony. Happy Valentine's to you too. What that kind of forces you to do is slow everything down and be more deliberate in what you're doing, instead of like just trying to. And in fact, this is one of the things I've told the students over the years about those shorter routines. That what we want to do with those shorter routines is take our time. That's why I made the shorter routines, so that instead of like trying to clobber your way through it, you could relax, be more deliberate, be more, I guess deliberate's the best word, because I guess the other word I'm thinking is focused. And you can't be You know, the opposite of that is like panicky, so that you're kind of panicking through the stuff. We don't want that. Okay, so by saying that you only get one shot at it, basically what you're doing is forcing yourself to be more deliberate and more focused and slow it all down. Any other questions? I hope that answered your question. There's no repeats. And that's a good place to start, regardless of what level you're at right now. Starting at the chops, at the pioneer level, to get a feel for how the exercises are, that makes a huge difference. That way, I start almost everybody. If they're a professional, I might start them higher. Have I ever used a stand light? Okay, so let me tell you about stand light. Yes, I do use a stand light. I'll show you mine. Let me grab it real quick. This is my gig bag. I've been carrying this bag to my gigs. You know, I'll tell you a quick story about that. You know, I remember when I was in college, and it's different for woodwind players, right? It's different because the guys who double, they have to take different instruments to different gigs, and it makes sense for them to not take every instrument to every gig, because they could get broken, they could get stolen, right? You don't want to leave anything like that in your car. That's just asking for trouble. So this one sax player, told me about the system, and I was using his system, and it made sense. His name was Danny Garcia. I think he's still alive. A sax player in El Paso. He's from El Paso. He went to Las Vegas for a long time, and then when they started using less live music, moved back to El Paso. So he was telling me his system, where he writes all the things he needs for the gig on the wall, and then checks on the wall by the door, checks that before he leaves each time. And that's what I was doing, but because that's what worked for him. And no matter how much I planned and asked and all that stuff, invariably, there would be one or two times, a year, which is too much for me, in my opinion, where I didn't have the right stuff for the gig. So what I started doing is taking a bag like this and taking everything. I take everything to every gig that I could possibly use on that gig. I take everything I would possibly use. And sometimes I'll get to the gig and we won't use any of this stuff. I'll just take my horn and play the gig and go home, and we won't use any of these things. This is one of those old-fashioned stand lights. And the problem with this, now I won't go to the new ones. I just won't, because they don't work so well. And with this, because of the bulb, it distributes the light evenly across the music, right? And it makes it so much easier to read. What people are using today is these LED clip-on lights. I haven't seen one of those yet that's as good as this. Not one. Now, here's the problem. Because everybody is using those battery-powered LED lights, they almost never put power on stage for us anymore. Okay, so I have to plug in to use this. And most of the gigs that I that I go to, if they need me to have the lights, then no, they don't make smaller ones of this kind. They do make smaller for the clip-on ones. You know, the LED battery ones. They do make those smaller. Um, so I'm not saying that people should do this kind of light. There's disadvantages, right? Like I said, it's not convenient anymore to have this light because they don't actually put the power on stage anymore. I guess I'm old fashioned. The other guys I think the reason why they like the LED ones is because they they're light, they're small, you can store them away and not have to carry a big bag like I carry. But to me, I've been carrying the same bag all these years. Sometimes people will say, can I take one of your bags? And I'll tell them, no, if you do that, I'll walk in circles. Right? Because I'm so used to that balance. The horn on this side, the bag on that side, and if you take one of those away, I'll go like meow, meow, meow. They always laugh at that. But anyway, so I'm not saying that's what you should buy. It really depends on what it is that you're looking for. I can't tell you I don't have any favorable reviews of the LED ones. Out of all the ones, so sometimes the band will supply lights for you, right? So, and when they provide the lights, almost always the light I end up getting is out of batteries, and it's got a fraction of the light that it normally has, and what it normally has is not as bright as this. And that for me, that's frustrating. It's always frustrating to me when people choose lower quality. Because I mean, think about it. If you what am I saying? Just the lights, just using the lights as an example. If you're willing to go with low quality lights, the musicians in your band are not going to play as well. And this is a mathematical truth, right? If we say that how well so let's say how well you play is X, represented by X, right? And talking about this mathematically, right? How well you play is represented by X, and playing with worse lights is X minus 50% of X, or whatever, right? So mathematically speaking, you're having a worse product, a compromised product by having worse lights. It's just a mathematical truth. So anyway, on my Should I Go Pro, I didn't mean to sound down. I appreciate I saw that you I think it was you that posted something, because I'll get an email with what you post, and then I saw later you changed what you wrote. So but yeah, I know exactly. You did say something in the original version about I'm assuming that was you, Do you know why I say I'm assuming that was you? I've got 3 Anthony Tonys, and I think it's 2 Anthonys and a Tony. And I don't always keep you guys straight in my head. I apologize for that. I hope that's not offensive. But I think it was you that said something about, and I won't say it out loud because there's obviously a reason why you deleted it. Um, but making reference to the good old days, right? Um, so I think things were different back then. I think in up until the 70s, I think you could make a very good living as a trumpet player without um, having to do so much business the way we do today. I think you could just be a great player and work enough to make a living up until the 70s. Um, so, yeah, Leonard says he uses his iPad. That certainly makes a huge difference. And a lot of the bands now are having iPads on their gigs. So that certainly makes a big difference. I'm looking to get a new iPad, but I don't want to skimp. My old iPad, I bought a $100 refurbished iPad, and it worked fine for I guess about 2 or 3 years, something like that. And I dropped it, and I mean it dropped only that far. It must just hit just the right way and ended up. Uh, it comes on, the backlight comes on, but the screen doesn't come on. And I've looked it up online. I've tried everything. It can't get it to work again. And it was a very cheap one to begin with. So now we're hoping to save up money and get a very nice one for the gigs and get a case for it that won't be more protective, right? Anyway, any other questions? Yeah. Nice to have you guys on here again. Nice to see Leonard. Leonard is my South African friend. He's a very active trumpet player in South Africa. He also teaches down there. Um, and I wrote and I'm only saying this because um, I want to invite you guys to, let me see if I can pull it up. There's a piece I wrote for him. And I'll put a, a link in the comments so you can check it out. Okay, I'll put there we go. So that's the a piece. It's in the style of the old Fisher Toll dialogue things, legato tongue and doodle tongue. So what about it? So legato tongue is very close to doodle tongue in my opinion, but doodle tongue has a back full. My understanding of doodle tongue is that there's a front back motion. Doodle tongue is sort of like a legato double tongue, but not really, because the back of your tongue never connects. Um, I'm not very good at doodle tongue, so I wouldn't want to put me down as an authority on doodle tongue. I think what it does is puts a dent on the air. Um, Yeah, so I don't know much about doodle. Now, of course, I know plenty about legato tonguing, and I can tell you about legato tonguing. Uh, some a lot of people want to just think that legato tonguing is just tonguing softer, and that's not necessarily true. What I do for legato tonguing, so like if the fingers are represent the teeth, okay, it's kind of hard to do this. If the fingers represent the teeth, the higher you go up, so like this is the gum line, this is the tip of the teeth, and this will be the gum itself, or the roof of your mouth. The higher you go up into the roof of your mouth, the more legato the articulation is. And I think that when I say there's a connection between legato tongue and doodle tongue, I think that's what the connection is, that you're higher up in your mouth. I might be wrong about that, but it seems to me that you couldn't do doodle tongue if you were farther forward than that. It seems to me that it wouldn't be possible. Like I said, I don't do doodle tongue. I've toyed with it years and years and years ago, but it's not something that interests me. Um, so I never really pursued it much. What else? Any other questions? Looks like we might be short today. Um, maybe because it's Valentine's Day. Hey, I didn't think about that. Since it's Valentine's Day, everyone's out. Um, I was going to say something, probably not a good idea. um, but it wasn't X-rated. Anyway, what else? Any other questions? We might make this short. I was talking about the technique stuff, right? Let me show you that really quick. So, and by the way, this is a work in progress. I'm still ironing out the wrinkles right now in the whole system, because you'll notice down at the bottom I have a note to myself. That note is to tell myself to make the form a little bit different next time, because I had too much time. Well, let me tell you what this is first. I'll pull it out of the book. At the top of the sheet. Okay, so when I say technique, I'm talking about jazz technique, and I think jazz technique is way, way, way beyond most of the stuff you'll ever need for classical. So I only do jazz technique. So like I do all my arpeggios, all my scales, and all these patterns. Um, just what you need for classical is like a fraction of what that is. So at the top of the form, this stuff here takes me. How long did it take? 3 months to get that far, and that means that I went 3 months without doing any of the improvisation on there. And I thought that's not good. So I'm going to redistribute so that the improvisation is spread out more on my sheet. Now, this whole sheet represents, I'm going to say, hundreds of hours of work, all in one key. This one's in the key of E flat. Hundreds of hours in one key. This is the second. The first one I did was the key of D, and it was amazing when I got finished with it. It really was amazing. I mean, just the way it felt, and the beautiful thing about this is when I was done with D, all of the other keys got better too. You're not, even though you're just working on the one key, that spills over into your other keys for some reason. So anyway, that's what I was talking about. So as you see, try to make this down here at the bottom. I have 2 more tunes to do. I have and I go through each of the tunes 50 times. That's what those hash marks are. I fill it up until I do 50 choruses. And actually for giant steps, it's actually 100 choruses because each chorus is 2 choruses, so it's really 100. So that's what I've been doing today. Before we started, is my technique stuff. Now I'm going to publish eventually forms like this that you can use in your practice time. I'm going to make the forms graduated so that, and in fact, I'll make some classical ones too. And you can go through this stuff in the check it out, put as many repetitions on these things as what's written on the form, and then go to the next key and do it on that next key. And I'm going to make it correspond to the 7 levels that I already teach. I'll have 7 levels of difficulty, and this would be the top level. So I'm going to break this, what I have here, into 7 different subforms, because I can't get my students, if it's taking me 9 months to get through one form, then it's completely unreasonable to expect my students to do that. It would take them years to get through one key. That's not practical. So that's why I'm looking at simplifying it into 7 stages. And my hope is that they have results that are so exciting that they'll want to go to the next one. Now, I'm hoping that very first level of the form that I write is going to be so good, just even at that first level, that the students will do that for the rest of their lives. Really. This is, by the way, part of the accumulative philosophy. I don't know how much I've talked about this in the live chats, but I teach a philosophy of practicing called the art of accumulative practice. And it's very, very different. It's a very different way of approaching practicing from the traditional way. I don't believe you have to practice every day. When you do this accumulative type of practice, you practice when you can practice, and you get results always. As opposed to the traditional way is that you practice every single day or else. And I tell people, that's basically what they're saying, is that you worship the trumpet god or you're going to have to pay. Right? And my approach gets away from trumpet worship. My approach, you no longer worship the trumpet god, but you still get stuff done. You still make that progress towards your goals. You still learn the literature that needs to be learned. You still get the technique that you need to have. He's still growing as a trumpet player. It's just not. It's just not under that old system where you have to uh, uh, worship. I mean, the reason I say worship, right? The reason I say worship is because here you are. If you think you have to do this all, I mean, think about it. People who are that dedicated to the trumpet, I've never seen in my entire life someone that was that dedicated to their religion. Ever. Never. Not even the best Christians I've ever met have been as dedicated. So we're talking about people that practice, there's people that practice 4 or 5 hours a day. And they have that attitude that if they don't do that, that their playing will suffer. And my approach to practicing releases you from that burden. Whether you think you have to do an hour a day or suffer, or a half an hour a day or suffer, or 5 minutes a day or suffer, I take the word suffer out of the equation, and you don't have to go every day. With this philosophy is what I'm saying. So anyway, if there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and stop. I forgot this was Valentine's Day. I mean, I didn't forget. What I mean is, in setting up this, um, this chat, it didn't dawn on me that the maybe Valentine's Day would be a obstacle. Anyway, very good. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Um, we'll do more. I don't think next week, if I'm not mistaken. I think I have a gig next week. Let me look real quick. One of these weeks coming up, I have a Friday gig. It's either next week. No, it's the week after. The 28th, we won't be doing this because I'm doing the rodeo. Yeehaw! Gonna be playing a rodeo gig for the first time. When I first moved to Houston, I used to play rodeo related gigs every year. Well, I shouldn't say that. You know what? I was gonna say that first time in years, but I think 2 or 3 years ago I had a rodeo gig. Um, but that was the first one in a long, long, long time. So it's nice to have another rodeo gig this year. Anyway, but that's not next week. That's the week after. Anyway, very nice. God bless you guys. Nice to see you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time. Later.